Writing a good story is hard. Making a good movie is hard. Transforming one into the other is even harder. Welcome to Adaptive Difficulty. This is a show where a couple of book lovers take on the challenge of adaptations. I'm Cameron, and with my friend Josh, we explore the difficult and sometimes bizarre choices that happen in the course of making an adaptation. This week, we are exploring 2005's Pride and Prejudice, starring Keira Knightley, based on Jane Austen's 1813 work of the same name.
Hello, this is Josh Darcy here with my regrettable companion, Cameron Wickham.
No. I am clearly Mr. Darcy. Out of the two of us, I'm Mr. Darcy. You are probably Bingley, if I had to guess, if I was forced to put a name to it.
So you were just like, I get to be the main guy, but you can be the least regrettable other guy.
I mean, you're welcome to be Mr. Wickham if you want. I just think that you would find that reprehensible.
Yeah. My starting bits were between doing that introduction and it's a truth universally acknowledged that two men in possession of microphones must be in search of a podcast.
That is what I will probably use as the line for the little tagline. So I'll have to write that down in a moment before I forget.
You're welcome.
I always struggle with those things. Because it's like, do I be funny? Do I be useful? I just am now just kind of rude to the audience.
Yeah. Well, the tagline is whatever. I think you're a natural, but you got to shove as many SEO words in the bottom part as you can.
That's true.
So, is this just like far and away the best book we've covered so far?
Probably. And I was actually very surprised at this book because I have never interacted with Pride and Prejudice at all, other than vaguely recognizing it as a book that exists. Whenever I was younger, as this is kind of a girl book. And then honestly, the closest I've ever gotten to it since I heard about it whenever I was 13 was Stephanie Patrick's from Game Theory always talked about it as her favorite book.
Okay. I mean, I wasn't surprised it was good because I know who Jane Austen is, but yeah, this is the most I've ever read from her in one go. My only prior experience is that my wife really likes this specific movie we watched for this episode. And I have a card game themed after it, not the movie, but just the concept of Pride and Prejudice.
Oh yeah, we played this card game before. Yeah,
I won't dwell on it too much right now because I think it'd be good for a future episode. But that has all the key characters and each you play as one of the women and you're trying to marry the most appropriate match, which is whoever they canonically marry usually. So I knew that sort of detail, the broad strokes of who ends up with who.
I mean, I
had forgotten a lot of it.
I knew that no one liked Mr. Wickham. Again, this is all coming from Stephanie Patrick's mouth. I knew that no one liked Mr. Wickham and that everyone liked Mr. Darcy, which is a little bit of a misnomer. I think she's very heavily skewing her opinion based on who she personally likes, but
no, I mean, I think if you like this book at all, you prefer Mr. Darcy to Mr. Wickham.
I mean, yeah.
Which is
I just think in the context
of the author and the primary characters.
That's fair. The primary characters, no one likes him until the very end.
Well, the primary character likes him by 75% of the way through the book.
Yeah.
Okay, I get Little Women was also very good. The Green Knight is good, but that's apples and oranges. I'd be if someone came up to me and was I like The Green Knight better than Pride and Prejudice, I'd be like, what are you talking about? So okay. So our prior experience is pretty scant, I guess.
Which I feel like is true for a lot of our stuff. We should start reading books we read as children.
I mean, we did Wonka, Minecraft.
Yeah,
I was intimately familiar with Minecraft.
To be fair, I was not intimately familiar with any of Wonka, except for the movies, and I was not intimately familiar with any of. I never really played Minecraft, so.
Well,
honestly,
you just need to assert yourself more when we pick things to cover.
That's true. I guess we watched the Mario Bros. Movie, and that one was me.
Yeah. Well, I will just not to dwell on last episode too long, but thank God that everything we covered for this episode was better than that. So,
I guess
did you have any, other than it being good, any primary thoughts just on the book?
I was comparing it a lot to Jane Eyre.
Yes,
because it's that's the other even somewhat comparable book.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're both written by women in a time where I think both of them had to publish anonymously, at least at first. And they're about like headstrong women who end up choosing their own match and have, the match is a tall, dark, brooding, handsome man.
I do think there's like significant differences between them though, in terms of like
the
structure
actually,
of the book.
I wrote down halfway through the movie, I was just like, I don't know, daydreaming, and I was like, talking point. And I thought I would bring this up at the end, but I just went, are we Mr. Rochester or Mr. Darcy people?
Oh, I'm so a Mr. Rochester person.
Yeah. Honestly, I think I am too. Like, this is more real for you, I guess, as a gay man. But in the hypothetical scenario where that's my reality, I think I prefer Mr. Rochester.
There's just something so nice, and like a man who goes to the lengths of changing his wife in an attic so he can marry someone else. There's just something romantic about that. What does Mr. Darcy do?
Well, I think Mr. Darcy is more passive, where it's like Mr. Rochester is a little like actively mean, and I like that in a man.
True. He definitely falls into, and so I had the quadrant of like, will call me the F slur, or won't call me the F slur. And like in terms of like a betting scenario where it's like, will but doesn't want to, won't but doesn't want to / that kind of thing. So it's like a political axis kind of thing. Mr. Rochester definitely feels like the will even if I don't ask him kind of category.
And it's okay.
We love that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're like, and they both have like secrets, but it's like, yeah, Mr. Rochester's secret is that he like, has a woman chained in his attic, but it's like, okay, because that was the best possible fate for her at the time. But that's dark and mysterious. Whereas like Mr. Darcy's secret is like, he's a messy bitch that ruins someone's marriage. So
I mean, I think that's disingenuous to Mr. Darcy. Because like, I would say his secret is more that like Mr. Wickham is a bitch who just like refuses.
I mean, Mr. Wickham is the bigger. I feel like Mr. Wickham is the bigger actual secret, but the whole like breaking up Jane's engagement is like more relevant to Elizabeth. So
yeah,
not that both aren't relevant and covered at length in the book, but
I also had several students who were reading this in another class of Jane Eyre, and they're just so totally against Bertha being put into an attic, and it's just like they refuse to accept that.
You have to. I'm not trying to get canceled, but like you have to have context. Like,
yeah.
She like I don't remember all the details, but she's like heavily disabled. Is that right?
I think she's just insane.
Okay, she's mentally disabled then, and it's like keeping her secret in an attic was like at the time in that cultural context like one of the better outcomes for the remainder of her life. So not that he couldn't have kept her out of it and just dealt like, but
can't believe that you endorse putting women in chains in attics.
I think I'll survive saying that Jane Eyre is a good book. I mean, I have no reputation to get canceled, so
that's true. We're not nearly popular enough to be canceled.
Yeah, exactly. And nobody's going to dig this up, when we inevitably are huge and be like, damn,
in 3 years when we've
positively.
In 3 years when we've dethroned Joe Rogan as the most popular podcast on Spotify.
Oh yeah. So one thing we used to do, and I don't think it's that useful, so we haven't done it in recent episodes, is talk about like, what do you think an adaptation would have to have or whatever before you watch it? But I did have like 3 major themes in the book where I was like, those are what I'm really latching onto that I just wanted to go over. And I'll spoil by saying I don't necessarily think the movie is bad, and we'll get into more details. It does not cover any of these things.
Oh, we are of the same mind.
Like I sat down, I was like, I want to get these thoughts on the page before the movie influences me. Which I think this is not to ramble too much. This is another sign that this was a better than average for what we've been reading, because it like actually activated my literary mind and had like themes. The first was that like the idea that all the characters are constantly playing cards and playing games, not just like literally, but also like that as a metaphor for their relations to each other. Because like, and I looked up some of the like the summaries of the rules for some of the games they were playing because I was curious about them. and some of them I had heard of. But like one of the games they play is Lottery, which is like a card game where you're dealt a card and then they draw cards from the top of the deck until somebody gets the matching card and they win. So like literally a lottery.
I cannot understand how they pass any amount of time having any fun with such a game.
But my point is, who do you think liked Lottery in the book? It was Kitty and Lydia. So it's like, you know, the most frivolous characters like this pointlessly frivolous game. Whereas like Whist, which is like the precursor to Bridge and like an actually strategic card game, is enjoyed by the thinking characters like Mr. Darcy and Mrs. Bennet, and so on. And also just this idea of like cards in your hand as like what you're using to win a hand of cards, and like your social capital as like what you're expending to like win the game of being married. I also had the thought that because obviously this gets modernized a lot, but if you were to modernize it like today, Mr. Wickham would be a sports gambler.
Oh yeah, I mean
he'd be on DraftKings, FanDuel.
Yeah,
he'd be trying to hit,
we have a lot less
croquet parlays.
You have a lot less capability of being like this day and age, being like, you can put it on my metaphorical tab that I will come back and pay eventually. So
yeah, exactly.
He's maxed out all his credit cards. He's into Bitcoin. He's lost Bitcoin.
Right. I mean, he's a fuckboy. Like, even that term's dated, I guess, by now. But
I get less fuckboy from the book version of him than I do from the movie version of him.
Yeah, that's true. And then the other big thing is that this is like a book about ways of corresponding. Like, there's dialogue, there's indirect discourse, which is when like dialogue is summarized in a paragraph. That's the correct way. You know more about that than me. And then there's writing letters to each other. And what I thought was interesting is that they get more honest the closer to letter writing you get. Like, the letters that people write in this are just like all true, even though in theory that's like when you have the most time to think and like craft a lie. Whereas the dialogue is like people being unable to like say what they really mean or think to each other.
I mean, I do find it fascinating in that regard, because I think so much of like today, especially, like immediacy is seen as tantamount to like truth, and anytime you're like planning things out, you're like committing subterfuge where you're trying to trick people. And I know that's not true, because I often find that like what people say in the moment is never really indicative of what they actually think, because they're letting emotions happen.
Well, yeah.
It is just very funny to me that like I recognize that, but at the same time, it's very funny to me that there are moments here where it's like Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth just had a big fight after he proposed to her and she turned him down, and then his next immediate step is to go write a letter and then give it to her and then walk away. Like, it's just a funny image to me.
He's our most neurotypical love interest ever.
I mean, I honestly, in the book for a long time, and he stops like giving it this way, but he comes off very like neurodivergent in a lot of ways, where he's very like,
yes, I was being sarcastic.
But I think that it's interesting that you talk about correspondence, because what I noticed in my list of like thematic concepts is how like interpersonal and social the book is versus how the movie is not. Because like the book, like you get like intense detail of like how everyone's connected to everyone else. Like, it's not just like if you had asked me what Pride and Prejudice was about, I probably would have been like, oh, it's a love story between like two characters, one of which is Mr. Darcy, and I didn't know who the other one was. I probably would have given some vague not important Victorian woman name. But
I like how you would have guessed instead of just saying you don't know her name.
Yeah, I mean, of course. But in the book, as I was reading, and this kind of annoyed me at first, of like hearing so much about how all the different towns and different parts of the country are connected and how everyone is like related to each other. And I grew to appreciate it mostly because I feel like it helped kind of, I don't know.
It's immersive in a way. I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but it's like that's the world of these characters. Like, it doesn't extend. It's like there's Derbyshire, and then there's like London is like visiting a foreign country, you know? And
it's that, and like, because I brought up Jane Eyre, and I compare it to Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre is very like isolated, and like she's at different locations, and she just go throughout, but like they're all like all the locations I think there's only really 4 of them because there's Gateshead, there's the school, there's is it Thorns Hall, whatever? Thornsville.
Yeah.
And then St. John's house, her cousin's house. Like those are like the 4 locations in the book, and like they're connected, and you do know kind of roughly how they're connected, but it's very much like once you're in that place, everything else around you is very like you're so far away from everything else, you're isolated. Whereas in like this book, it like constantly reminds you of like how different parts of the country are connected and where things are in relation to each other.
Yeah.
And it's just like a very different vibe where like the point almost feels less to be about like a love story between 2 people and more of like a big, expansive, immersive view on like society at large.
Right. And it's like, sorry, what was I thinking? This is, I guess, a tangent, but like halfway through the book, I was just like, do these people do anything other than like go to other people's estates and stay there for 2 months and then go to a different estate?
What is there to do, Josh? Your other alternative is to play lottery at home. You should play lottery with people you've not seen in a while. Then you can at least tell stories.
But I was just like, especially in the beginning when I was not accustomed to this being like how the entire plot would go. I was like, Jane really just like showed up at is it Netherfield, and like was like and then stayed there for like 3 weeks, like,
and it's like
it's
like an entire chapter
don't
of the
complain
book
at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's just very weird, and it just makes it seem, I guess in hindsight, when I compare this to like Jane Eyre, I get a lot more of like, okay, Rochester is actually kind of a weird person because apparently everyone else is just visiting each other all the time, and Rochester like has like one party throughout the entirety of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's true.
But like the movie turns it into just a typical love story where they focus on like 2 characters.
Yeah. Right, yeah. And it's like even the love aspect, like obviously, yes, if you have to boil it down, that is the A plot, is Bennett and Darcy. But even the love stories are more about the collection of characters and how they end up arranged for marriage in the book than just that coming to an end.
Did you have another like point of the thing? Because I had another element.
It's not related, so go move on to yours.
Mine was specifically about kind of like how nature interacts with the story in the world, where like, again, because like, you know, the relationship of like space and location, like you get to see a lot more of like the natural world, and like Elizabeth and all of them are always going on walks to like Marrington or whatever. You get to see them a lot kind of interact with nature. Whereas in the movie, it's just not really like that. Like, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's these like beautiful images of like wide shots of fields, you know, but they're not integral in the same way.
Well, I think of like, and we can talk about this later, but like the difference in Pemberley and how it's depicted in the movie versus how it's depicted in the books, I think a big kind of departure from how the book does it.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we're actually more into the movie itself. My last major theme of the 3 I noted is that the way the plot, and this isn't not a theme so much as the plot, but the way the plot unfolds almost has like whodunit energy, like kind of like mildly unexplained things happen, and then there's a scene with Mr. Darcy where he's like, here's why that happened, I was behind it all. And that's like the first confession of love, and his letter that he writes is the first time that happens. And then it kind of does the same thing over again. And then his final confession of love, that where Elizabeth accepts his engagement, he kind of does it over again, where he's like, I was the reason that Mr. Bingley was suddenly nice again, and I was the one who hunted down Lydia in London and, you know, restored Mr. Wickham's reputation to some degree.
Well, I think this like comes down to like your point of like how like correspondence plays into this, where like so much of the conflict in this book is just based on the fact that people don't talk to each other for extended periods of time. Where like the only reason that like you know, Wickham can kind of like manipulate people is that like Mr. Darcy doesn't talk to anyone about this whole thing. It's all about kind of like retaining information and maintaining prestige and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. At the same time, it's like, it's because people always complain about like the sitcom where everyone could have just explained themselves in the first place and then you wouldn't have an episode. But it's more natural than that because of what we've been talking about of like, well, you spend 2 months in an estate with like 5 people in it, and then you go to a different estate. Like, how do you get word around fast enough for these things not to happen? I mean, even letters take 3 days or whatever to deliver within the county.
It is one of those things.
So
it does make me wonder how you would try to modernize this in a way that makes sense, that doesn't frustrate the audience.
Well, a few years ago there was the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which is a web series where Elizabeth is a vlogger produced by John Green. So we'll put that on the short list to cover.
That's probably true.
But I just thought it was interesting because it was it doesn't even have so much of the book is spent on things other than a love story between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. That's relatively few of the words in the word count, I would say. And kind of the main intrigue driving the rest of the book. I just thought it was interesting that it almost has this proto mystery story plot structure.
Well, I mean, it feels a lot to me like The Great Gatsby, where your narrator or your kind of focus character is not the main character of the story that's happening. It feels like if you were to do this as what's the typical love story, it's the Bingley versus and Jane kind of story, and her sister's kind of witnessing that and kind of rooting for her, and then on the sidelines there's this kind of Mr. Darcy kind of subplot, where that's what we're invested in because we're invested in in her, but it's almost in terms of how the universe is set up, it's necessarily kind of on the side of things.
Right. Any other major themes you noted of just the book before we, I think, are ready to dive into the movie?
Of just the book? Let me see. I don't think so. Other than that, I know that it's commonly associated to it's Darcy's Pride and Elizabeth's Prejudice, but it almost feels and this is probably not anything shocking, that this applies to literally every character, because they seem to kind of like and dislike characters, and then they kind of retroactively justify why based on either they're being insincere or there's some kind of reason for their prejudice or whatever. So again, this kind of ties into my point of Elizabeth and Darcy are a very small part of kind of the story of this gentry society.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's clear to anyone who actually reads the book itself that that's what the title is getting at. I think any impression, and I had it too, that one it's Elizabeth and Darcy are the only people it's really talking about, is just pop cultural simplification.
Speaking of simplification, the movie.
Yeah, I will give it credit right at the start. I think it showed a lot of restraint that they didn't have a narrator just so they could do the opening line.
Yes, that probably is. I mean, on one level, I would have been it's such a good opening line. You should work it in anyway, but I can see why they avoided the narration.
But it feels so obvious that it's almost you can't do it.
Yeah, but it feels obvious in the way it's well, yeah, of course you expect that. So it almost feels and I mean, I don't really care one way or the other. But it almost feels they should have just done it because everyone expected them to, and doing it so that you seem different is not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, you seem to have more overarching issues to talk about with the movie, whereas I'm more ready to just go through it in order. So I'll let you take the lead.
My two biggest complaints are that it kind of flattens the kind of society to just so we can focus on Elizabeth and Darcy, which I mean, it makes sense because you're condensing a 400-page book into a 2-hour movie.
Right.
But it does. There was almost no way you could kind of convey the interconnectedness of the people and the locations just through movie without it being weird. But it does lose a lot of its charm and effect for me in that regard. And then that's that point. That's that first point. And then I hate Mr. Darcy in this movie.
Really?
Yeah. I
thought his performance was fine. And
No. I'm fine with his performance. It's that they remove a lot of the stuff that makes him seem likable to Elizabeth in the book.
Yeah. Well, and I think this gets to my number one point, which is I think the last half, what constitutes the last half of the book, which I'm going to say is post his confession that gets rejected, to the end, is just way too rushed in this movie to the point and I think that's the root, because actually I paused it to go get dinner, and they were at Netherfield's ball, or Mr. Collins had just proposed to Elizabeth or something like that. And it was like 50 minutes in, which is about halfway through the movie. And I was like, this scene happens like 30% of the way into the book. So it feels like they just like took their time, and as much time as they could possibly needed up until then. And then they were like, oh shit, this is supposed to be 2 hours long. And
well, I mean, it almost feels to me like they were more concerned with like, they want, and this ties into my thinking of like how they changed like the mansions and the estates like relationship to like nature throughout the film. They're much more concerned with like the appearance of like opulence and like money, like interest, that kind of stuff.
oh yeah.
Because I think that they're kind of like catering to the idea that this is like women's fantasy of like being a princess.
Yeah. I did notice the balls are like 10 times more extravagant than anything I pictured from how they were described in the book.
So the balls, yes. The dancing, no. Because I would not have, I mean, I'm sure I figured it out, but like I would have guessed, I never would have guessed like line dancing in that way.
Yeah,
Like,
I just mean like the number of attendees, like there's balls in the book where it's like, you know, the names of everyone in attendance. At least that was the impression I got. Whereas that would like be impossible for the ones they're showing in the movie.
I mean, I just think it's one of those things where it's like, it adds up to the opulence and extravagance of like the lifestyle.
Right.
And like, that's part of the fantasy to some degree.
Yeah. And then, but yeah, because I get what you're saying. Like the fact that at Pemberley, he like goes out of his way to like be a nice guy now, and it seems to be like a genuine change of heart, doesn't really get communicated. The explanation of like what he really did to help Mr. Wickham, and his help repairing like Jane's relationship with Mr. Bingley and hunting after Lydia, all that stuff is very like abbreviated in the movie. Is that what you're getting at about why he's not very likable?
Yeah. It just feels like, it feels a lot like how the live action Beauty and the Beast handles Beast, where like he just kind of is mean to her, and then at the end they kind of are just in love, and he like does nice things, like he goes and like rescues her, but like we don't get to see that kind of intermediate kind of period where he's like trying to be better.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, I think it's just they got rushed, or the movie is rushed. And like, I guess if I had to make overarching complaints about the movie, my number 2 past that rushing is I just feel like every character is drawn so much more cartoonishly to like, in some cases, like an absurd degree. Like Bingley is like an idiot. Mr. Collins is like a complete dweeb.
I think my first, like one of my first notes was that, Bingley is giving major like himbo like vibes where he's just like no thoughts whatsoever.
Yeah, it's like that scene at Netherfield where they're talking about like, what should a good woman have? She must be able to read and draw and blah blah blah, which is directly from the book, the line anyway. And then everybody's kind of laughing at some joke, and Bingley's just like like he doesn't get it, and is just like laughing because everybody else is. And I'm like, Bingley in the book was not just like an outright dumbass. Like,
well, and I think it's the kind of like flanderization that only happens because they want to make Darcy seem like the only obvious match to like Elizabeth's intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like a
and also like they make Elizabeth more bookish in the movie, because like in the book she is smart, but she's not. Mary is the bookish one. I mean, I'm sure Elizabeth can read, but it's not like a personality trait of hers as far as I remember. But Mary, it is. And that was the one time where I was kind of on your side, where I was like, they just want not. I feel bad because we're two men like talking about this movie, but like
I know,
but like they just want women to relate, like the type of woman who would watch Pride and Prejudice to relate more to Elizabeth, by having her be bookish.
Whenever it opens up with her like reading a book, and my first immediate thought, and again, I recognize that we're two men who are talking about this, but like it's that scene in the live action Beauty and the Beast whenever she's teaching that girl to read, and the guy comes over and is like, teaching a girl to read? Isn't one of them enough?
Okay, to be fair to the live action Beauty and the Beast, that was already like, it wasn't as underlined as much, but that already was a plot point in the animated movie.
I know, but it's just one of those things where I'm like, why do it this way? But I didn't like Bingley's kind of character, and Mr. Collins went from someone... Actually, I think I like his character the least in terms of, like, the difference between the two books. The difference between the book and the movie is because, like, in the book, I got the sense that he was kind of full of himself and kind of arrogant and kind of didn't realize that he was kind of, like, pathetic in that way because he's like socially clinging to, like, more important people. Whereas in the movie, it just seems like he's kind of pathetic because he might be neurodivergent and he's kind of socially awkward. And it felt a lot less like...
In the book, he owes so much, and it's so clear that he owes so much to Catherine de Bourgh that he's, like, obsessed with her. But he's been... I think the impression is kind of he's been thrust into this society by that support from her and isn't as used to its manners or whatever as the other characters.
I guess that could be true. It's just that, like, I feel like you could detest and hate the book version in the same way that you don't like St. John from Jane Eyre, but the movie version, it feels mean to, like, be like, it feels mean to be mean to him.
Yeah, he's like, in the book, he's like a practical but boring choice, where it's just like the only reason...
He's like aggressively moral.
The only reason I would marry you is because I have to get married and I know my life would be stable if I did. Whereas in the movie, it's like, I don't know, it's like my life would be hell if I married you because you are so annoying, like, all the time.
Of course, you do get to see him give the sermon in the movie, which you don't really get to hear about that in the book. So, and he does strike me as exactly the kind of person who would give that kind of sermon.
Yeah. But, like, speaking of just, like, drawing the characters more simply, Mary doesn't get a lot of attention in the book either, but, like, they just, like, dress her like a goth in the movie and are like, okay, that's her.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't think...
it's just like...
Was that, like, were there young women in Regency England who were like, I wear all black now because I'm brooding? I mean, maybe, but I'm not...
I mean, it's just a victim of, like, turning this very complicated book about a lot of people to being about just, like, two people.
Yeah.
Like, the only character who really kind of, like, survives this is Jane. And that's really only because, like, out of all the characters in the book, Jane is the one who's most directly connected to Elizabeth.
And
everyone
also,
else is, like...
it's just, like...
I mean,
Jane is kind of an easy character because, she's almost a Mr. Collins type of just, like, she is a practical person. Like...
Yeah.
So...
I mean, she's, like... I mean, there's nothing, like, significant or special going on with her, which is why, like, it makes sense that she would be kind of, like, the lead in a kind of, like, typical romance movie, is that, like, they're boring, like, leads that kind of, like, don't have a lot of thoughts going on in their head. They're not stupid, but, like, they're not, like, super complex. They just kind of like each other to like each other.
The only pushback I'm giving you on this take is that everybody knows romances have to start with the characters not liking each other. So Jane and Bingley are fine with each other at the start. So it's obviously Elizabeth and Darcy are the main characters.
No, they don't have to start. They don't have to dislike each other. They have to have something that keeps them away, because Twilight is a movie that is a romance, and they both like each other when they first see each other.
Okay. And actually, I would argue this movie makes it a lot, like, they both have crushes on each other within, like, setting eyes on each other, Elizabeth and Darcy in this movie, which is different. In the book, Elizabeth really doesn't like him, and he, within the first 20 pages, he has a crush on her, but it's not reciprocated.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily super obvious that he has a crush
on
her.
But the narrator tells the reader that he does, so...
Yeah.
Which I thought was... I mean, I thought it was nice in a way, because it just felt, like, unexpected that, like, he was the one to, like, initially be, like, so enamored, or whatever. It gives him some intrigue, because you know he's at least a little more sensitive than he's letting on.
It is very, like, enemies to lovers coded in a lot of ways, and kind of, like, how, like, their relationship, like, transitions.
Yeah. I mean, this is, like, the archetype.
And unlike in the movie, the book actually explores what that transition looks like.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then one thing I thought was kind of, like, it's almost like a contradiction is there's kind of two parts to this. I think the book is a lot more clear-eyed about the fact that marriage is transactional and an economic reality for the characters. I think the movie realizes that and is more negative about it while emphasizing it less, if that makes sense.
Well, I see this in kind of connection to, like, the mother character, where like early on, I definitely feel like in the book, you're supposed to kind of fall in the kind of same line as the father, Mr. Bennett, where he's like mocking of her. And I don't know if this is like just because like of our sensibility related to like marriage as a transaction in today's age, but like I felt that like we were like supposed to kind of see her as incredibly overbearing, incredibly embarrassing, incredibly like I don't want to say self-centered, but like materialistic, and that was like her kind of big kind of conflict with everyone else in the book. And like you get that in the movie where she is definitely embarrassing, but I feel like the book then does go on to like point out all the ways in which she's just kind of right in terms of like the society they live in. I especially think this is true with regards to the kind of plot point about Lydia, which in the book comes out of, I don't want to say comes out of nowhere, because it doesn't, because it's really kind of, I think it's actually built up kind of well. It's just kind of built up in the background where you're focusing on other things that you don't notice it. Where like, you almost forget that like her sisters, other than Jane, are like characters that are important until like you get this kind of reveal that she's run away with Wickham, and it's like disastrous, and it's like, oh yeah, this is the kind of time period where it is where like if you do that and you don't immediately get married, you're kind of like ruining not only your own life but the life of your entire family, and kind of like having to sit there with like the several chapters of them kind of just trying to be worried about where she is does hammer home that like for all the craziness that her mom is and does and is embarrassing, and it is kind of somewhat self-defeating in her goals of getting them married, it does make sense in context of what she's trying to get them to do and what she's trying to avoid for them in the future. Whereas I think in the movie, it's like, you don't get any of that because you can't slowly build up the Lydia plot point, and that kind of aspect.
Yeah, you don't have enough time to spend on Lydia. And then even when they do bring it up, it's literally like they get the letter that it's a problem. 30 seconds later,
it's immediately solved.
Whereas in the book, I mean, it's like, it's the emotional climax of the book. And it lasts like 50 pages at least before you know the resolution. Like it's the climax more than like Darcy proposing again is the climax.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the point where Darcy finally swallows all of his pride, or the last little bit of his pride, and does something to help specifically her and her family.
And it's also the point where for Elizabeth's journey, she goes from kind of being interested in this relationship now to, oh, this has potentially been completely taken away from me because of this error in my sister's judgment, and it like really wrecking her emotionally. So,
well, I think a lot of it comes from, even though I know that it's a foregone conclusion when I opened the book, because I just kind of knew the plot in advance, it's a lot less like obvious that like they would ultimately end up together than in the movie.
Yeah,
because like in the book, even if you know that like Mr. Darcy's like the ultimate end game for Elizabeth, there's still like such significant roadblocks in their relationship, whether it's like kind of the first kind of like interactions they have, whether it's the other people that are surrounding him, the people that are surrounding her, that you're kind of like, okay, I don't see a clear path forward for how they can actually get around and having their relationship. So like when other people are brought in as potential suitors for Elizabeth, you're kind of worried about that, because you're like, well, I know she doesn't like Mr. Collins, but what if, I could see that being the thing, because she doesn't have anyone else to kind of go for. And then she turns him down. And then you have Mr. Wickham, and you're like, okay, Mr. Wickham's a viable suitor or a viable alternative, where he's not really a viable alternative in the movie, because everyone, and the way it's kind of shot and framed,
everyone kind of already knows he's a
it's
cad.
obviously going to be Darcy.
Whereas in the book, it's clearer that he has a better reputation, and she actually courts him for a bit in the book, which does not happen in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, we're so focused on the Elizabeth-Darcy relationship that we ignore literally every other possible relationship, and like every other possible relationship in that book is the reason why they don't get together.
But to go back to kind of what I brought this up is like, I think the movie obviously recognizes this, but it has a very just like 2005, 2025 opinion of like, well, that was obviously wrong. Elizabeth's going to marry for true love. Whereas I think the book, because of when it was written in the time where it's set, is much more just like matter of fact. Like it's an element of the story you're reading, and you get to see how that works. And I would say yes, ultimate, because Elizabeth rejects 2 proposals on the basis that she doesn't love them. So it's taking her side. It's not like, it's good that marriage is an economic transaction, but it's less overtly just like, well, that's obviously bad and look how silly it is,
I mean, it kind of turns into the point of like, Darcy doesn't like improve as a person. He just is better by the end of the book. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you can stop and think in the book, like, maybe he's being a performative male, like he's just doing good things because he has a crush all of a sudden. But then it's like, well, he's been walking the walk for like a year or whatever, like he's actually been encouraged to change. So
yeah, and like he does it without her like, and I mean, she doesn't do this in the movie either, but like, he does it without her asking. Like, I mean, they had the fight when he proposes to her the first time.
Yeah, I guess.
And she's like, I could never.
He has no reason to believe that what she said, which was pretty final, that she wasn't interested in marrying him, would ever change. So, yeah.
So clearly he doesn't respect women.
Oh, no. Okay, that feels like the opposite conclusion of what I was saying, but.
I was joking.
One thing I did like is there's a scene where Elizabeth blows on a feather and then it match cuts to a fire like being blown. That was fun.
What a very small thing to focus on, but
well,
I focused a lot on the first time that they go and visit Mr. Collins's patroness,
Catherine de Bourgh.
Charlotte's wearing the hat with the feather on it, and I don't know if you noticed this, but as she's walking, it like bounces back and forth, and I just stared at that for like 30 seconds. I was very captivated.
There's a lot of feathers and flames in the movie. That does not lead me anywhere.
Well, it's because she's like
where I have a conclusion, but
she's like a swan or something.
Write that down. She could be black. Was that Natalie Portman or Keira Knightley?
I do think that like, no idea.
It's Natalie Portman. Okay, never mind.
I was very confused when you said I was very confused because I didn't make the connection when you first said it, and I was like, Josh, what are you talking about?
I'm cutting this out. No one can know my shame.
Yeah. But where was I?
Another flourish I liked that the movie has is the second ball where Darcy offers to dance and they have that little conversation. I liked the little flourish where everyone else disappeared and it was just them dancing.
See, I dislike this because I think it feeds into the notion. I know that this is a Pride and Prejudice movie made in 2005, and so the conclusion is foregone. But I think it does too much to like tell the audience that like this is the only one you should be worried about.
This is
and
not
I understand that like
Elizabeth Bennet is not like the protagonist of a harem romance. Like,
I'm not saying she is. I'm saying that like part of what makes a romance a good thing is that like, what is the roadblock to them like having their relationship? And for the majority of it, it's, his pride and her prejudice. But there are other factors involved, and it's like, I don't know. It's very, and I know it's not the intention. It just feels very deliberate that in a book that's so about society and other people, and the fact that the movie like flattens all that down, that one of the scenes they include is a scene where they literally remove all other people so they can just focus on those 2 people.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I guess I'm giving it the allowance. It's like, yes, that is frustrating, but taking it as a 2-hour movie where they have to focus on one element of this book and just being okay with that for a moment, I thought it was a nice scene.
Point conceded.
You don't have to agree with it. I'm not making you concede. I'm just the whole like thing about like Mr. Bingley engagement to Jane was sabotaged by Darcy. I don't like that Elizabeth finds that out like 2 seconds before the proposal from Mr. Darcy, because she hasn't had any time to like stew on it and like dislike him for it. Like she dislikes him for it, but like in the book, it's a little more separated than that.
Yeah, I mean, let's see, what's the term called? I mean, there's like no sense of like everything in this movie feels very rushed.
Yeah. It's the same problem as Lydia's problem being resolved literally within 30 seconds. Like, Jane finds out that he sabotaged Mr. Bingley's situation, gets proposed to, and then gets the letter where Mr. Darcy's like, I'm sorry I did that, within like 5 minutes of screen time. Whereas it's like this like huge world altering revelation that takes like half the plot of the book to resolve.
It's just, I don't know. There's no pining in this movie. They don't pine for each other.
Yeah. Real yearners can't support it.
I want yearning. I need the limerence.
And also, in that letter...
I need them to be staring outside a window.
In that letter, Mr. Darcy doesn't explain why he objected to the marriage and never does. So he never gets his piece about the Mr. Bingley situation. You just have to assume.
Well, I think so much of it, like, that letter specifically is, I think, very interesting because, like, and this ties again to, like, who knows what and when, is that, like, she knows from previous sources, and you get this in the movie a little bit too, whenever she's talking to his cousin. Like, she knows his letter is true independently of, like, reading the letter because, like, she had previous kind of confirmation that kind of makes it all make sense. And I feel like you get less of that kind of internal thought process, and of course you get less of it, the internal thought process, but you get less of it in the movie itself. Also, I can't believe I waited this long. The fact that his name is Fitzwilliams, instantly, no, cannot marry this man.
Would you rather marry a man named first name Fitzwilliam or Colonel Fitzwilliam?
I would rather marry Colonel Fitzwilliam because he has a name I could call him other than that.
But your name would be, I mean, putting yourself in the shoes of a woman in Regency England, your name would become Fitzwilliam.
Yeah, but like, if I'm like, I don't know, what is his name anyway? Like,
I don't remember
him
Colonel
like
Fitzwilliam's first
James.
name.
Like, if it's like James, I'm going to call him James, and like when I talk to him. Actually, I guess I'm not in this book because everyone calls them by their last name. Like the mother's like Mr. Bennett, and he's like Mrs. Bennett.
The only reason I even remember Darcy's first name is because the one time they say it, I was like, hey, that's a guy they've already used. There's already a guy named that. And also,
it's his cousin.
Parts of the movie, I was a little slow on like what character is that because they use first names a lot more than the book.
That's true.
Like only the main sisters call each other by first names, which I feel like is probably just accurate to the time.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I have a mild form of facial blindness, but also like I have absolutely no concept of who any actor or actress is at any given time, except for like maybe like the 10 most famous in the world. And Keira Knightley does not fall into that category for me. So, and I knew she was in this film, and I was like reasonably sure that she should be Elizabeth because that's the main character. But at the same time, when the movie was starting, I was like, is this supposed to be Elizabeth? I have no idea what this woman looks like.
You didn't remember her from Pirates of the Caribbean?
Honestly, if you put both of them next to each other in their outfits from that show, that I would be like, they're different people. Like, okay, my facial blindness may not be mild.
Yeah, that
I mainly judge people by like
both movies love to put her in period dress where she's getting rained on. So like she looks similar in all of them.
No. I would say that like their hair is a little bit different and the kinds of
right, but once her hair is rained on, it looks similar.
They look different.
Okay.
I judge mainly by hairstyle and the kind of general outline of the shape of their body,
which is the same because she's the same woman.
No. She wears a different kind of dress.
Okay. I guess
her dress is more colorful. A lot of weird. And this may be accurate to the time period. I just felt like none of the dresses were none of the outfits really were that interesting.
Yeah, I don't know that they were super relevant. I mean, most of them looked fine, but I specifically was talking with Rachel about this, that Caroline Bingley wears like a sleeveless dress to one of the balls. Like that would have, from our understanding, that would have just looked like she was wearing her underwear back then. So
I don't know. I just, in terms of like, this is the one thing I have in like as point in the opposition of like it not catering to the fantasy is I feel like none of them were in like princess-esque dresses.
Yeah. I have a couple more points that are at least mildly in the movie's favor. I like the little added scene where like Bingley and Darcy show up to the house at the end, near the end. They talk for a little bit, they leave, and then they're like by the river, like strategizing their next visit together, just like as bros.
I did point that out. I like that.
I just thought that was fun.
Because I thought that was like, it's one of those moments where like, oh, these two characters actually like each other.
Yeah.
Which like, you get told a lot in the book, but at the same time, Mr. Darcy's just kind of an asshole for most of the book, so you're kind of like, what does he see in Mr. Bingley?
It shows that they like each other, and it also shows that they have like an actual emotional investment in like the romance that they're going through,
doing it correctly,
rather than just like, I need to get married because I'm a rich man, like the beginning sentence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking you may have issues with this, but again, taking the movie on its face as this is just a straightforward romance version of the story, I thought the climactic walk-up of Mr. Darcy towards Elizabeth at the end worked really well. It was very soaring and romantic.
I liked it well enough. I thought it was fine. I did not like the ending sequence.
Well, I think that the version we would have watched is a US cut, and there's like a UK version where what I read is they don't kiss at the end. I don't know how much that means is not there, but it's different in other parts of the world.
Why is the UK like against kissing?
I don't know, because I'll have to look up what exactly is different.
I just didn't like it because the ending in the book is very like interesting to me, because like the last like entire chapter is basically just about how everyone else is reacting and relating to kind of like this new kind of marriage, which again kind of ties into the point of the book being all about kind of like how the society is set up. Whereas I guess it makes sense in context of the movie, where it's like focusing only on these two characters, where you get these private two moments. But I just didn't, this private moment between these two, I just didn't care for it because I like the book better.
It seems from what I'm finding that the UK version cuts everything except that entire last scene on the little patio.
Wait, they cut everything but that scene?
No. That's the only scene that's not there.
Oh, well, you definitely said they cut every scene but that, and I was like, wait, Josh.
It gets it's only that scene, but it goes on for a long time. Yeah, actually, the plot on Wikipedia ends before that scene. So I guess the last part is where Mr. Bennet's like, if any of my other daughters have a man come knocking, I'm at my leisure.
Do you think it's like a comment on like the media literacy of America, where we like refuse to have like,
how do I know they got married and love each other?
A non-explicitly defined ending. Listen, I would say that's insane as a reason, but I teach students and they have the same problem.
Is that even if they felt that was an issue, the book just goes on for longer into the future and shows a scene where they are married, so they could have just done more of the book.
But again, I mean, it's like, this wants to be a typical romance, and typical romances end with the final kiss. They don't show marriage, because marriage is not sexy.
But my last thing, at least that I have pre-planned to say, is Mr. Bennet comes off a little better overall in the movie. Not that he's like horrible in the book,
yeah,
but there's a sense that he's like kind of gave up caring a little bit, especially for like the daughters that are younger than Elizabeth. And the movie just doesn't have time to show that.
Like early on in the book, I was kind of like, Mr. Bennet's a fun character, because he's like tot-totting his like wife's like craziness. But then as I grew to appreciate his wife, I'm like, this man is actually kind of a bad person.
And yeah, that's just the sort of thing where it's like both his wife and him are complex, which the book has the depth and the time to show us, and the movie doesn't. So, but I guess just like my overall conclusion is like, I think it's a perfectly fine, if you know what it is, which is it's just a much more straightforward romance movie. It's a very enjoyable movie, but it's just much more like poppy and light than the book. That's just like its identity compared to the book.
I agree. That's probably what it's going.
And you just don't like it.
I disagree that I like it. I just don't like it. I mean, and I'm not. I alluded to this at the beginning, so I probably should at least talk about it. But like, when they go to Pemberley in the book, it's like very like unadorned. It's like naturally beautiful in connection with nature. Kind of like, you know, I don't know. It's kind of like one of those notions of like the natural world is inherently moral. This kind of like shows his like moral character, as opposed to like the facade of like broader society where everyone's like wearing makeup and
or
whatnot.
Even like as a contrast
then, like,
to Rosings instead of more of the same.
Yeah. And like, and then in the movie they have this he has this weird like museum of like marble statues. There's like 30 statues that are just kind of in there.
My wife's apparently been there.
And they're all like Greek and they're naked.
And those statues are like still there. Like they're part of the estate they filmed in, not like put there. Other than the one of Michael McFadden, or Matthew McFadden, whatever his name is, who plays Mr. Darcy. I assume that one has been removed. But
I think one of the statues was Achilles, and I don't know what to make of that, considering that like Achilles was probably being done by Patroclus.
Yeah, but not everyone has to think about that every time.
I do, Josh. And if I do, everyone else has to too.
I read the Iliad. It was ambiguous.
Listen, I read Song of Achilles. It was not ambiguous.
Yeah, but that was written like 5 years ago. Maybe more like 10.
All I'm saying, Achilles is a straight bottom. Well, not a straight bottom. You know what I mean?
A brand new invention. Okay.
No, Josh, straight bottoms do exist. It's just...
Well, okay. But okay. So... But yeah, I get what you're saying because
I mean, I was going to say, why do you think that he's like wearing a dress in the Iliad?
Oh, that's what they all did back then. I specifically noticed as I was watching that because there's a scene in the book that I just thought was funny when it happened, where Elizabeth is like at it's when they're staying with Mr. Collins, but Darcy is also there, and every day she's like, I take walks in the garden. She's like, Mr. Darcy showed up, so I told him like exactly my route and when I do it so that he can stop interrupting me. But somehow he keeps ending up here at the same time as me. And that does not happen in the movie for sure. So that was another example of just like the characters preferring to interact in like, it's a garden, so it's not like pure nature, but more natural environments with like foliage.
I do think that like, I feel like you don't notice it in the book until you start watching the movie, just how much of the book is actually like set in like the natural world where they're like outside and going around in the park and whatnot.
To be honest, I did not notice it as much as you, I guess, because whenever that was happening, I just sort of was only picturing, if I was picturing anything, the characters talking to each other and not whatever environment they were set in.
You were in a blank room, Josh.
I don't have aphantasia, which I know is like trendy. That'll get me canceled. But,
claiming aphantasia?
No, saying that it's trendy to have it.
I did recently look into like discourse surrounding whether or not aphantasia was like
is even real,
or if it's just because people are bad at thinking. I mean, like some of it probably is like biologically based, but I think a lot of it does come down to. And
have you ever seen
I'm okay being canceled for this.
Have you ever seen the chart that's like when you picture an apple, what do you picture? Uh-huh. And it's like different. First of all, I can picture a fully complete, detailed apple if I want to. Not to brag. But
ooh, Mr. Apple over here.
When I read a book, I tend to see more like, they're like faceless mannequins, just kind of like in proximity of each other.
Well, I mean, I think it comes down to like effort required. Like when you ask me to think of a single apple, like that's not a big deal. When you ask me to think of a dinner party where there's like all this stuff happening, it's like, I probably could sit down there and have like a full image in my head, but that requires a lot of work. And I just kind of need to cast, like, for me, a lot of it's like, you know how like, it's kind of a lot like storyboarding where like you just kind of like get the general shapes and the outlines of things.
Yeah.
And like,
and I also think it's kind of this like, it's almost this contradiction where it's like when you're reading a really well-written, thematically rich, language-rich book, you're spending so much time on the actual words on the page that it almost interrupts your ability to make a mental image.
I mean, because you're not like you're dealing with concepts a lot at that point, whereas like images and motifs and metaphor and stuff like that, like you're not dealing with like direct objects. Well, not direct objects, but like direct,
like more action-packed books.
Well, I mean, for me, a lot of it comes down to like, especially nowadays, because everything's on video or whatnot, and no one reads anymore. That like their ability to do this, their muscle to do this, is just bad because they don't ever use it. So like, it's just like, well, I've not had to think about how something looks for my entire life, so obviously the book is just words on a page.
So is
and that's why aphantasia is not
real. A Yoshi, a Kirby, a Mario, or a Donkey Kong. And by that I mean, when you look at the book Pride and Prejudice and think about how hard would this be to turn into a movie, would it be as hard as Yoshi games, as hard as Kirby games,
Kirby's
as hard as Mario games?
You always make this mistake. It's Kirby, Yoshi, Mario, Donkey Kong.
Okay, I'm sorry. Regardless.
I think, like, honestly, in terms of all that it accomplishes, and the fact that it's, like, so broadly focused on like the larger society and how that like how the shape of that like social landscape is. It almost feels like this is like legitimately a Donkey Kong.
I almost agree with you to the point where I think I just will agree with you. Which is funny because before we had this full conversation, in my head I was kind of like, the movie didn't get it perfect, but it's not like an experimental novel. Like, it's a straightforward 3-act book. So I was like, it's like Yoshi, but I think I've been swayed.
I mean, it's just like,
and
I think that like there's a bunch of plot lines that form like a web, and you could pick out any like 1 or 2 plot lines and put into a film and for 2 hours and do it fairly well, like this one did. I just think you could not do the entire book. Whereas I think you could do the entire book of Jane Eyre or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think I actually was thinking about this earlier. So now we look at the movie that we just watched. How well did it do at this hypothetical Donkey Kong game? And I had already thought it's done like can you beat Donkey Kong without collecting any coins run? Like
it's an any percent speed run.
It technically finished the game, but it got like as few of the collectibles as possible. It did not get a K, O, N, or G on anything. No coins.
Collected.
No secret levels.
No Kong letters.
Yeah, exactly. Like it didn't take any branches into any side plots that it should have.
It had one goal in mind, and that was to see the credits.
Yeah. Like, to be as a movie, not thinking about it as did this capture everything I liked about the book I read, I would give it like a 7 out of 10. But I would not be that generous talking about it the way we are now, where it did the no percent speed run.
Yeah. Like, I have like, it's an okay movie. Like, I honestly think this is one of those things that would probably work a lot better as a mini series or a limited series or whatever, where you have
I'm glad you said that, because there's a BBC miniseries from 1995 that I have been planning to put on our list as a new Pod Plus revisit topic. It's like 5.5 hours, so it's not that incredibly long, but it was aired as a TV show.
That's interesting. That probably would work better because you have more time to like breathe and let the broader like cast of characters actually do their job as cast at supporting cast.
Right. Yeah. I feel like at least what I see anymore is like people generally either like the movie from 2005 that we just talked about or that miniseries. Like, those are kind of the two big players in the field. There's obviously movies from like the dawn of cinema adapting this book, but those are the two big ones these days.
Okay. So in terms of, I guess we established what it was. I guess that all that leaves is kind of like, what else besides Pride and Prejudice? What other media have you been consuming?
The other day, I watched Picnic at Hanging Rock, directed by Peter Weir, who's the director of... He directed like The Truman Show and Dead Poets Society. It was good. It's about this like... It has some Pride and Prejudice vibes because it's like set in historical... actually, it's set in historical Australia, but at a girls' boarding school, and they like go on this like day trip to this like local landmark, Hanging Rock, which I think is real. But these like 4 girls from the group go on like a sojourn to the rock itself and like mysteriously disappear for like reasons that are never discovered. And it's just like a drama about that boarding school community's reaction to that happening. It's not based on a true story, even though it kind of tries to present like it is.
I got 2 stories.
But it is interesting. It's like it's made in the 70s, and it deals very subtly with like same-sex attraction and some other themes that maybe weren't as mainstream at the time.
Interesting. I think of the things that I've been doing in between reading bits of Pride and Prejudice and watching the film, I watched season 2 of The Has-Been Hotel, which came out like last month. I stand by my statement that I think the show is fine. I think the music is good. I think the fan base, and I do preface that I recognize that they are 13-year-olds, is cringy. And also, there's like 20 million subreddits that are all like dedicated to that show, and it's like other show that's kind of based in the same universe. And when I say like 20 million subreddits, I literally mean it, Josh. I think there are more subreddits for that show than there are for anything else.
Yeah. I had a similar experience with, I don't even know if you've seen them, but I really like the Blue People Avatar movies. And that was not a popular opinion on the internet until like 2 years ago.
When does Fire and Ash come out?
This December?
Hey, we can watch it when I'm down there.
Yeah, we'll have to like drive like an hour and a half away to see it on a worthy, like at least 3D screen. But I was on the subreddit for a while, but then it was like so obvious that everyone posting on that subreddit was like 12 years old that I just had to stop. Like it became entirely overran with this like concept of like the evil lady from the new tribe is like so hot, and I was like, she's not hot. She's like an anemic, ash white, like alien being. Like,
listen, I mean, so like I don't get recommended the subreddits, and I do click on them because I do like to be angry all the time, for my stuff. But like the sheer lack of media literacy, and I know it's because they're 13 years old. I know it is, but I'm like, you guys watch the show. Like the amount of people who just don't understand what's going on and just like assume that they do, or that or worse, that their headcanons are like being insulted by the creator of the show by making it so that she makes her own show. Like, it's wild.
Yeah, I really don't like that whole... Like, I even get annoyed at people who are like, George R. R. Martin owes me another book. I'm like, no, he doesn't. Like, don't worry about it.
I mean, he doesn't, but at the same time...
If it comes out, it comes out. Like,
he's kind of accepted a lot of money to put that book out. He's not done it yet, so like...
Well, no. He got whatever his advance is from his publisher, and his publisher, for all we know, has a clause that's like, you're not good at this, so we're not paying you yet. I'm sure that's not how it went, but...
I just need him to finish both books, because I'm not going to read that book series until it's finished.
But like there was supposed to be like 64 more Canterbury Tales than we got, and it's okay.
No,
so it'll be okay.
I'm 1,000% convinced that like the Canterbury Tales we got, there may have been a plan to have a few more. I don't honestly think he was actually intending to write like 150 or however many he was supposed to be writing.
Well, maybe George is like, you fools! I don't even intend to write those. I'm not just stuck. I never planned to.
I mean, I'm also convinced that the ending of the show was the ending of the book that we were supposed to get.
And now he's like,
everyone hated it, so he doesn't want to write it anymore. Ignoring the fact that like he could probably write it in a way where it would be a good ending and make sense.
It's almost like he would have two extreme novels that are as long as he could possibly want instead of one season of TV.
Well, that's not really his fault. It's the showrunner's fault. Again, having never seen the show, having no stakes in the game.
I don't know anything about it. I've not seen it or read it. But I'm just saying, if his anxiety is, oh, people didn't like that season and that was what I was planning, it's like you have literally unlimited writing resources. Like you can write as long of a book as you want and it will get published.
That's true. So. And it will get read and it will be liked by pretty much everyone. Other than that, I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3. The story in that game is good.
Nice. Yeah. I played enough of Act 1 to where I was in, like, I think I was on the way to Act 2. Like, I was in the underworld on the way to being in Act 2. And then I wanted to, like, download something else to my Steam Deck, and that was the biggest file, so I had to delete it.
I got it when it first came out, and then, like, I kept playing it, and, like, I would get, like, halfway through Act 1, and I would start again with another character, because I was, like, real ADHD mode at that time, and that really burned me out very quickly, so I was, like, didn't play it for now. But now I'm just doing one thing, so.
But I think it's a very good game. It's very polished. The changes it makes to D&D 5e's combat are almost all positive.
That's controversial, Josh. I've been on the subreddit.
Well, D&D 5e is not, I would not even say is good. So, but Baldur's Gate 3 I would say is. And I just don't think it didn't strike me as like so overwhelmingly like amazing and revolutionary as like everyone tends to portray it as.
I just think that's probably true, but I imagine that like the kind of games that you play on a regular basis are not the kind of games that like the people who really like that game are typically used to playing. Like I feel like people were surprised that they liked that kind of game because,
Yeah.
I mean, CRPGs were kind of rare and still are kind of rare.
Right.
So people were surprised. And so you have people who are like, from all walks of life, being like, whether they were a, Call of Duty like gamer, only that thing until the day they died,
Right.
versus like someone who only played like Stardew Valley.
I get it. It's like, and I do see it as like, it is probably the single most like polished and accessible example of what it is, which goes a long way. But I just feel like the one thing that got me is like, I feel like people talk so much about like the level of choice and freedom. It's like, but like ultimately it felt like most of the like pivotal points were, do you want to massacre this entire group of enemies or try not to massacre this entire group of enemies? Like, it was, do you want to be evil or not? Which has been a thing in games for a long time. Even if they dress it up
I
more
think
than that.
I think that's just generally true for like most like quote unquote like choice heavy games where it's like the vast majority of your choices don't actually change anything. I just think that like that game in particular is better at dressing it up, which does go a long way. Like, I mean, of course it can't be like infinitely variable, but like the fact that it makes a lot of choices seem like they're important, even if they aren't, does a lot for making it immersive.
But it's also like, I like completely overlooked like 2 or 3 of the characters in Act 1 and didn't realize I had until I was like, I keep hearing about this character and I don't have him yet. Does he like only show up in Act 2? So I went back and got them. But like the game, I think, actively made less sense when I didn't have them.
I do think that of the companions that you get in that game, I think that there's a very clear like 3 or 4 favorites of ones that make sense for you to have, and then there's like 2 to 3 that like are just there to be like different.
You have to have like Karlak or whatever her name is.
Well, she's apparently like a very
red lady,
and this maybe does not make it into the episode at this point, but like she's one of those characters that like apparently has a lot of like, if you play as her character, she has a lot in terms of like internal dialogue about things that are happening. But like, I always make my own character. I never make.
Yeah, that's what I did.
I never choose one of their characters.
But it's her, the Astarion, the mage lady, Shadowheart.
She's a cleric.
Yeah. And then, which is a type of mage. And then one other dude, I don't remember. Anyway.
Probably Gale, the wizard. Yeah.
It was just like, I don't know. It was this thing of like, I acknowledge that this is very well presented, but it just isn't like blowing my world away, which is what I was told it would do.
I'm of the general opinion that anytime that anyone tells me this is the greatest game of all time, I'm going to clock it in at about, at best, like an 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah. I mean, in the back of my head, I'm like, I'll go back to it and try to at least finish it someday. It just hasn't happened yet.
We'll do it together, Josh.
Yeah, but we're both at different points of the story now.
I'll start again.
Okay. All right. Well, the last thing I want to say is that if you're like me and it bothered you that this movie did not have enough candlelit scenes of thematically relevant card playing, as it should have, watch Barry Lyndon, which is like maybe 30% beautifully ornate candlelit scenes of people playing cards in ways that are relevant to their character development.
No idea what that is, but that sounds marginally interesting.
It's a Stanley Kubrick movie who did like 2001, The Shining. It's like
I know who he is.
It's a period epic. It's about the like, Barry Lyndon was a novel and it's an adaptation, so we could put it on the list if we wanted to. But he's just like, he's a cad, like he's like a social striver that like kind of ruins his life just in the pursuit of like meaningless status. It's a good movie. Anyway, next month, since it's December, we're covering, as usual, our Star Wars holiday special, which I mean we read the next Star Wars novel we haven't read yet and talk about it as an adaptation of the movie. So we are on the second one, The Empire Strikes Back, and we're doing the original novelization because I'm sure there's several, but the one that was published around the same time as the movie, whoever that's by. The first one claimed it was by George Lucas, but this one does not. Let's actually check here. It is by Donald F. Glut.
Sounds like a pen name. But it should be interesting. I only ever read the first line because I think you pointed it out to me as it being kind of cringy.
It's something like, and I'm not going to go check. We'll find out next episode. But it's something like, I can't believe I'm hanging upside down because of this Wampa.
Yeah, it does radiate. I bet you're wondering how I got in this situation.
Yeah. Luke's famous line from the beginning of The Empire Strikes Back. I bet you're wondering how I lost my arm.
That's my question. Why is it so thematically relevant to his character? That's the question. Okay. Well, that's all, folks. As always, we'd like to give credit to those that made this podcast possible, those that worked on the adaptation. A great big thanks for making the world just a little bit more artful. For our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Join us next time for some deep questions with Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back.